You're weaving through city traffic on a motorcycle that weighs less than most scooters, your feet planted firmly on the ground at every stoplight, and strangers can't stop staring at what looks like a time machine on two wheels. Sounds impossible? Well, Kawasaki just made it reality with their 2026 W230. And what we discovered about this little retro might completely change your mind about what makes a great motorcycle. We're standing here at Motorcycle Live 2025 in the UK, surrounded by the latest superbikes, adventure monsters, and high-tech touring machines. But tucked away in Kawasaki's lineup is something that caught our attention for entirely different reasons. This isn't the bike that's going to set lap records or win any drag races. This is the W230, a machine that's been quietly winning hearts in Asian markets, and now it's finally crossing over to British shores for 2026. And here's the thing that most people miss when they first look at this bike. Sometimes the most interesting motorcycles aren't the ones with the biggest numbers on the spec sheet. Sometimes they're the ones that solve problems you didn't even know you had. Let's talk about what's beating at the heart of this retro beauty. Under that classically styled fuel tank sits a 230 cubic centimeter air-cooled single-cylinder engine. Now, before you start comparing dyno sheets and power curves, let's address the elephant in the room. This engine produces about 17 horsepower at peak and just under 20 newton meters of torque. Compare that to the Triumph 400s pumping out 40 horsepower, or even the Honda GB350 making around 27. And you might think Kawasaki brought a knife to a gunfight. But here's where things get interesting, and this is crucial to understanding what this bike is actually about. Kawasaki didn't use this engine because they couldn't build something more powerful. They use variants of this reliable 230 cubic centimeter unit in bikes like the KLX Dual Sport. This is a proven, bulletproof engine that's been refined over years of real-world use. It's an engine that prioritizes smooth power delivery, fuel efficiency, and most importantly, ease of use over raw performance numbers. Think about it this way. When you're navigating tight city streets, filtering through traffic, or simply enjoying a leisurely weekend ride through the countryside, do you really need 40 horsepower? Or do you need an engine that's perfectly matched to the bike's character? One that won't intimidate new riders or overwhelm shorter riders who might already be dealing with confidence issues? Now here's where this bike starts to reveal its secret weapon, and it's something that shocked us when we looked at the spec sheet. The W230 weighs in at just 133 kilograms dry. Fill up that 12-liter fuel tank completely, and you're still only looking at 143 kilograms wet. Let that sink in for a moment. To put this in perspective, this bike is approximately 20 to 30 kilograms lighter than both the Honda GB350 and the Royal Enfield 350 models. That's the weight difference of carrying a small passenger. Imagine picking up your motorcycle after it tips over in a parking lot. Imagine maneuvering it into a tight garage space. Imagine feeling it respond to every subtle input you make through the handlebars. That weight difference isn't just a number on paper. It fundamentally changes the entire riding experience. For newer riders who might be intimidated by heavier machines, this could be the difference between building confidence and building anxiety. For shorter riders who've struggled with wrestling heavier bikes at slow speeds, this could be liberating. And for urban commuters threading through congested streets every day, this could turn a stressful commute into something genuinely enjoyable. But Kawasaki didn't stop there. They understood that weight is only part of the accessibility equation. The seat height on the W230 sits at just 745 millimeters. Now you might be thinking that sounds similar to other beginner-friendly retros like the Royal Enfields or the Honda GB350. But here's the kicker. This seat is actually 40 to 50 millimeters lower than those bikes. That might not sound like much, but if you've ever struggled to touch the ground on a motorcycle, you know that every millimeter counts. At traffic lights, in parking lots, on crown roads, or on loose gravel, that confidence of having both feet planted firmly gives you security that's genuinely priceless. It's the difference between enjoying your ride and spending the entire time worried about dropping your bike. We watched rider after rider swing a leg over this bike at the show, and the reaction was almost universal. Surprise at just how planted and secure they felt. Taller riders found they could sit comfortably with knees slightly bent. Shorter riders many of whom had resigned themselves to tiptoeing on other bikes, found themselves flat-footed with room to spare. This is the kind of real-world usability that gets overlooked in magazine comparison tests, but makes all the difference in actual ownership. Now, when we move on to the chassis and suspension, you need to understand that Kawasaki made deliberate choices here. This isn't a bike designed to carve canyon roads at knee-dragging speeds or tackle track days. Instead, it's built around a traditional steel cradle frame, the kind of simple, proven design that's been working beautifully on motorcycles for decades. Up front, you'll find a conventional telescopic fork. No fancy inverted forks or electronic damping adjustments here. At the rear, there are twin shock absorbers with preload adjustability, giving you the ability to fine-tune the ride for different loads or riding styles. The wheels are proper wire spoke units, an 18-inch up front and a 17-inch at the rear, wrapped in retro pattern tires that perfectly complement the bike's aesthetic. The braking system keeps things appropriately simple, with a dual piston caliper up front, gripping a 265mm disc, and a single piston setup at the rear. These aren't the massive radial mount calipers you'd find on sport bikes, but they're perfectly sized for a machine of this weight and intended use. Remember, we're talking about a bike that weighs less than 145 kilograms, fully fueled. The braking power required to safely stop that kind of mass is substantially less than what you'd need for a 200-kilogram adventure bike or supersport. Some might look at these specifications and see compromise. But there's a different way to view this: appropriate engineering. Every component on this bike is sized and specified for exactly the kind of riding it's designed to do. There's no excess, no over-engineering for capabilities that most riders would never use. And you know what that means? Lower costs, easier maintenance, and fewer things to go wrong. The technology package on the W230 takes this philosophy of simplicity even further. Browse through Kawasaki's website specs for this bike, and the technology section is refreshingly brief. ABS. That's it. No ride modes, no traction control, no Bluetooth connectivity, no TFT display with 17 different menu options. And before you dismiss this as being outdated, consider the target audience. Riders who are drawn to the classic, heritage-inspired aesthetic of this motorcycle often appreciate simplicity in their technology package as well. They don't want to scroll through digital menus to adjust their suspension. They don't need smartphone integration to check their tire pressure. They want to turn the key, thumb the starter, and ride. What Kawasaki has preserved here is something increasingly rare in modern motorcycles: twin analog gauges sitting proudly in the instrument cluster. Real needles sweeping across real dials. No pixelated screens that wash out in direct sunlight. No software updates required. Just timeless, at-a-glance readability that motorcycle enthusiasts have appreciated for generations. For retro bike fans, this cockpit area is going to be a massive selling point. It's authentic, it's purposeful, and it perfectly matches the bike's overall character. But let's talk about what might be the W230's strongest asset: its visual appeal. We spent considerable time with the Honda GB350S when it launched in the UK, and while we genuinely enjoyed riding it, there was one consistent criticism we had. Despite being marketed as a retro-style bike, it didn't lean quite hard enough into that heritage aesthetic. The tank graphics were fairly basic: some gray blue, a black option. Much of the bike was blacked out, which gives a modern, stealthy look, but doesn't necessarily evoke classic motorcycles from the golden era. The W230 takes a completely different approach, and it's glorious. Chrome front and rear fenders catch the light beautifully. The exhaust system gleams with chrome detailing. Those wire spoke wheels we mentioned earlier, they're not just functional, they're a styling statement that immediately signals classic motorcycle DNA. The tank and seat combination shows genuine attention to detail, with finishes and textures that reference traditional motorcycle design language. Look at the tank badges, crafted with care and mounted with pride. Notice the chrome fuel filler cap, a small detail that many modern bikes overlook with plastic alternatives. The round mirrors aren't just shaped that way by accident. They're deliberately styled to echo motorcycles from decades past. Even the LED lighting, which is thoroughly modern in its efficiency and brightness, has been designed to look period-appropriate rather than starkly contemporary. Everything works together cohesively. This isn't a parts bin special with a retro tank grafted onto a modern platform. This is a motorcycle designed from the ground up with a clear aesthetic vision, and that vision has been executed beautifully across every single component. Whether you're looking at it from the front quarter, admiring the profile, or studying the details up close, the W230 maintains its visual identity. For riders who have been disappointed by half-hearted attempts at retro styling from other manufacturers, this Kawasaki demonstrates what's possible when a company fully commits to a design language. This is the kind of motorcycle that generates second glances from pedestrians and conversations at gas stations. It's the kind of bike that photographs beautifully and looks just as good parked in your garage as it does rolling down the street. Now let's address the question that's been building throughout this entire discussion. What does all of this cost? Kawasaki has priced the W230 at £4,654. Immediately, you're probably doing mental math, comparing that figure to competitors. The Honda GB350 for 2025 came in around £3,999. Royal Enfield's Hunter 350 sits under £4,000 as well. At first glance, you might think Kawasaki has priced themselves out of contention, but here's where context matters. That Hunter 350 is indeed cheaper, but it's also Royal Enfield's entry-level offering with a correspondingly basic finish. If you want something more comparable in terms of traditional detailing and classic aesthetics, look at the Royal Enfield Bullet 350. That bike, with its similar level of chrome work and heritage styling, comes in right around the same price point as this Kawasaki. So the real question becomes, what are you getting for your money? You're getting that incredibly low weight that makes the bike accessible to a wider range of riders. You're getting that exceptionally low seat height that builds confidence. You're getting styling that fully commits to the retro aesthetic without compromises. You're getting Kawasaki's engineering reputation and dealer network. And you're getting a proven engine platform that prioritizes reliability and user-friendliness over headline-grabbing horsepower figures. Is it the absolute cheapest option in the small-capacity retro segment? No. Is it potentially worth a slight premium for the right rider? Absolutely. The performance isn't going to set your hair on fire, and we've been completely transparent about that from the beginning. This isn't the bike you buy if your primary concern is keeping up with faster traffic on motorways or showing up your buddies in acceleration runs. But if you're looking for something genuinely easy to live with, something that makes riding accessible and enjoyable rather than stressful, something that looks like it rolled out of a different era while incorporating modern reliability, then this W230 deserves serious consideration. According to Kawasaki, these bikes should start appearing in dealerships from January 2026. That means you'll have the opportunity to actually throw a leg over one, feel that low seat height for yourself, experience that lightweight, and see whether the styling speaks to you in person the way it does in photos. Here's what we'd recommend. Don't just look at spec sheets and make decisions based purely on numbers. Get yourself to a dealer when these arrive. Sit on it. Pick it up off the side stand a few times. Imagine yourself riding it through your daily commute or weekend routes. Consider whether those 17 horsepower will actually be a limitation for the kind of riding you do, or whether the other benefits outweigh that single specification. This is the kind of motorcycle that rewards riders who prioritize the overall experience over individual performance metrics. It's a bike that could introduce countless new riders to motorcycling without overwhelming them. It's a bike that could give shorter riders the confidence they've been seeking. And it's a bike that brings legitimate style to a market segment that sometimes feels like it's just checking boxes rather than creating cohesive designs. The small-capacity retro market is heating up with options from Honda, Royal Enfield, and now Kawasaki, bringing renewed focus to this segment. Competition is healthy, and it gives riders more choices than ever before. Whether the W230 is the right choice for you depends entirely on what you value in a motorcycle. But one thing is certain. Kawasaki has created something that fills a specific niche with purpose and style. And that's worth celebrating in an industry that sometimes feels obsessed only with more power and more technology. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Does the W230 appeal to you, or would you choose one of the alternatives? What matters most in your decision-making process? The conversation continues beyond this script, and we're genuinely interested in understanding what different riders prioritize when they're shopping in this segment.